Your words cost you $10,000 last month. You just don't know which ones yet. What if everything you think you control is actually controlling you? 3 invisible forces decide your income, relationships, and peace of mind daily. Most people master one. The wealthy master 2. Legends master all 3. Why do some people earn more by saying less while you work harder for less? Your mouth betrays your mind. Your mind sabotages your money. Your money reveals both. This isn't theory. It's the operating system running your entire life. 2 questions. Which force owns you right now? What would change if you owned them instead? Listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you isn't motivational nonsense. It's forensic truth. Right now, in this moment, 3 forces are determining the trajectory of your life. They're deciding whether you'll be wealthy or broke, respected or dismissed, peaceful or anxious. And here's the part that should terrify you. You're not consciously controlling any of them. They're controlling you. Your mouth speaks without permission. Your mind runs on autopilot. Your money flows according to invisible rules you never questioned. And every single day, these 3 forces don't align. You're bleeding opportunity, income, and potential. The worst part? You've gotten so used to it that you don't even notice the leak anymore. I've spent 15 years studying the difference between people who transform their lives and people who stay stuck in the same patterns year after year, complaining about the same problems, wondering why nothing changes. And I've discovered something that changes everything. The people who break through, who multiply their income, who command respect, who build wealth, who seem to have some unfair advantage over everyone else, they're not smarter than you. They're not luckier. They haven't been handed opportunities you haven't received. They've simply mastered 3 things: their mouth, their mind, their money. And when all 3 align, magic happens. Not wishful thinking magic, mathematical magic, compounding returns that accelerate faster than you can track. But here's what nobody tells you. You can't master one without understanding all 3. They're interconnected. Your mouth reveals what your mind believes. Your mind determines how your money moves. Your money reflects the quality of your mouth and mind. It's a closed-loop system, and right now, for most people, it's a closed loop of self-sabotage. 3 forces working against each other, creating friction, generating heat, producing nothing but exhaustion. Think about the last conversation you had where money was involved. A salary negotiation, a sales call, a discussion with a client about your rates. Did you feel confident? Did your words flow with certainty? Or did you hesitate, hedge, qualify, apologize? That hesitation wasn't a character flaw. It was your mouth revealing what your mind actually believes about your value. And your mind believes what your bank account has been telling it. See how they're connected? Now multiply that moment by every conversation you have in a year, every email you send, every meeting you attend, every time you speak about yourself, your work, your worth. If your mouth is untrained, if your mind is running on corrupted software, if your money is reflecting back inadequacy, you're trapped in a loop that reinforces itself daily. The poor communication costs you opportunities. The lost opportunities reinforce the scarcity mindset. The scarcity mindset makes you communicate poorly. Around and around it goes. But when you flip the script, when you master all 3 and get them working together instead of against each other, the acceleration is almost unbelievable. Your mouth begins to open doors. Your mind maintains the clarity to walk through them. Your money compounds because you're finally capturing the value you create. And each improvement in one area lifts the other 2. It's not addition. It's multiplication. I'm not going to promise you that this is easy. Mastery never is. But I will promise you this. If you're willing to face some uncomfortable truths about how you speak, how you think, and how you handle money, if you're willing to do the work that most people are too proud or too scared to do, your life will look completely different 6 months from now. Not slightly better, unrecognizably transformed. So let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, even if the answer stings. Which of these 3 forces is currently ruling you? Is it your mouth, constantly sabotaging opportunities with poor communication? Is it your mind, spinning in anxiety and doubt and limiting beliefs? Is it your money, or the lack of it, controlling every decision you make? Because one of them has you on a leash right now, and until you recognize which one it is, you can't break free. The tyranny of the unmastered. That's where we start. Because before you can master anything, you have to see clearly what's currently dominating your life. Most people never get past this first step. They know something's wrong. They feel stuck. They sense they're capable of more, but they can't diagnose the problem accurately, so they apply the wrong solutions and wonder why nothing changes. Here's the diagnostic framework that will save you years of wasted effort. When you're struggling financially, when opportunities keep slipping through your fingers, When you work hard but never seem to get ahead, the problem is never just one thing. It's never just that you need to make more money. It's never just that you need to think more positively. It's never just that you need to communicate better. It's that all three are misaligned and they're creating a compound penalty. The compound penalty. This is critical to understand. When you're weak in one domain, it doesn't just affect that domain. It multiplies across all three. Poor mouth skills don't just make you a bad communicator. They reveal mental weakness, which gets reflected in low income, which reinforces the mental weakness, which makes your communication even worse. It's a downward spiral with momentum, and the longer it runs, the harder it is to reverse. But here's the beautiful part. The same compounding effect works in reverse. When you strengthen one domain, it doesn't just improve that area. It lifts all three. Better communication gives you evidence that your mind can use to build confidence, which allows you to command higher prices, which gives you financial proof that changes your self-concept, which makes you communicate with even more authority. Upward spiral. Same mathematics. Different direction. So where are you in this system right now? Let's do a quick audit, and I need you to be brutally honest. No one's listening except you. No one's judging except reality. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your mouth mastery? When you speak in professional settings, do people lean in or tune out? When you state your prices, does your voice stay steady? Or do you rush through it, hoping they'll say yes before you lose your nerve? When you need to set a boundary, can you do it cleanly or do you over-explain, apologize, and create confusion? If you're being honest, most people are operating at a 4 or 5 at best, and that's costing them everything. Now rate your mind mastery. When pressure hits, do you stay clear and strategic or do you spiral into worst-case scenarios? When you're making decisions, can you move quickly and confidently or do you agonize for days, seeking more information you don't need? When you think about your future, do you see possibility or do you see all the reasons it won't work? Again, most people are running mental software that's 15 years old, full of viruses, desperately in need of an upgrade. Finally, rate your money mastery. Do you know exactly what you earned last month, what you spent, and where it went? Can you accurately describe your financial trajectory over the next 5 years based on current behavior? Do you feel in control of your money or does it control you? And here's the real test. If I looked at your bank account right now, would it confirm that you're good at what you do, or would it reveal that you're underpriced, undisciplined, and unclear about your value? If those questions made you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is data. It's telling you where the work needs to happen. And here's the truth that most people don't want to hear. Your current results, right now, today, are a perfect reflection of your current level of mastery in these 3 domains. Not your potential mastery, not what you're capable of on your best day, your actual consistent daily mastery. And if you don't like your results, you can't change them by wishing or hoping or waiting for circumstances to shift. You change them by mastering the forces that create them. Let me tell you about Marcus. Brilliant software developer. Could code circles around most people in his field. But he was making $65,000 a year while developers with half his skill were clearing 6 figures. Why? His mouth was untrained. Every time he talked to a potential client, he'd start by apologizing for his rates, then immediately offer a discount before they even asked for one. He'd say things like, "I know it might seem like a lot, but I think I could probably do a good job for you if you want to give me a chance." Listen to that language. Might seem like a lot, probably do a good job. If you want to give me a chance. Every single word is communicating low value, uncertainty, and desperation. His mouth was betraying him, and it was betraying him because his mind genuinely believed he wasn't worth more. And his mind believed that because his bank account kept confirming it. Closed loop, self-reinforcing, compounding in the wrong direction. I worked with Marcus for 4 months. We didn't touch his technical skills at all. We worked exclusively. Start paying attention to filler language. This is the tax you're paying without realizing it. Every time you say like, or you know, or kind of, or sort of, or I think, or maybe, or possibly, you're leaking authority. You're communicating uncertainty. You're giving the other person permission to doubt you. And in professional contexts, especially when money is on the table, that doubt is expensive. I watched a woman pitch her consulting services to a CEO last year. She was incredibly qualified, 20 years of experience, proven results. But in her 15-minute pitch, she said, I think 43 times, "I think this approach would work well. I think you'd see results in about 90 days. I think my rate is fair for the value I'd provide." Every single instance of I think weakened her position. Because think isn't knowing. Think is guessing. Think is hoping. And no one pays premium prices to someone who thinks. Now imagine that same pitch with one change. This approach will work well. You'll see results in 90 days. My rate is fair for the value I provide. See the difference? The content is identical. The confidence level is completely different. And confidence, not competence, is what gets you hired at the rates you deserve. This isn't about faking confidence you don't have. It's about stopping the bleeding. It's about eliminating the language patterns that undermine the competence you've actually built. Because right now your mouth is contradicting your credentials. Your words are arguing against your worth. And you're doing it unconsciously, dozens of times a day, in ways that are costing you money, opportunity, and respect. Then there's complaining. The most expensive habit most people have. Complaining feels good in the moment. It creates bonding with other complainers. It gives you something to talk about. But it's a poverty behavior that keeps you locked in poverty consciousness. When you complain about your clients, about the economy, about how hard it is to make money in your industry, about how people don't appreciate quality anymore, you're not just venting. You're programming your mind with scarcity. You're reinforcing the belief that the world is against you. And your mind believes what your mouth repeatedly tells it. I'm not saying you can't acknowledge challenges. I'm saying there's a difference between strategic problem solving and chronic complaining. One moves you forward. The other keeps you stuck. And most people have developed such strong complaining habits that they don't even recognize them anymore. It's just how they communicate. It's their baseline. And that baseline is repelling the people and opportunities that could change their life. Want to do something radical? Go 7 days without complaining about anything. Not your job, not your clients, not traffic, not the weather, not politics, nothing. Just 7 days. And watch what happens to your mental state. Watch what happens to your energy. Watch what happens to the conversations you have and the people who want to be around you. This one change, eliminating complaining, will transform your life faster than almost anything else you could do. Because here's what you'll discover. Most of what you complain about is either not actually a problem, or it's a problem you have the power to solve, but you'd rather complain than take action. Complaining is a way to feel like you're doing something while actually doing nothing. It's a pressure release valve that prevents you from building up enough frustration to make a real change. It's a trap, and you're caught in it. Then there's gossip, the sneakiest credibility destroyer. Gossip feels like social bonding. It feels like connection. You and someone else talking about a third person who's not there. But here's what's actually happening. You're teaching the person you're talking to that you can't be trusted. Because if you'll talk about someone else when they're not around, you'll talk about them too. And on some level, they know this. Even if they're participating in the gossip, even if they're enjoying it, a part of their brain is filing you in the untrustworthy category. And that filing happens unconsciously, which makes it even more powerful. Professional reputation is everything in a connected world. Your reputation determines who refers you, who hires you, who trusts you with bigger opportunities. And gossip destroys reputation faster than almost anything else. Because word gets around. The person you gossip about hears about it eventually. And when they do, you've lost them permanently. Not just as a client or a connection, but as someone who might have opened doors you can't even see yet. So here's the rule. If you wouldn't say it with the person in the room, don't say it when they're not. Period. No exceptions. And if you find yourself in a conversation where someone else is gossiping, don't participate. Not because you're too good for it, because you're too smart to pay that price. But here's what most people don't realize about their mouth. The biggest problem isn't what they say. It's how much they say. Over-explaining is epidemic, and it's rooted in insecurity. When you're not confident in your position, when you're not sure the other person will agree with you, when you're afraid of being questioned or rejected, you over-explain. You provide more information than was asked for. You defend your decision before anyone attacks it. You give 17 reasons, when one would have been enough. And here's what happens. In the other person's mind, when you over-explain, doubt, because confident people don't need to justify themselves extensively. Confident people make statements and let them land. The more you explain, the more you signal that you're not sure, and the more the other person starts questioning whether they should be sure either. I need you to understand something fundamental about communication. Brevity is power, especially in professional contexts, especially when money is involved. The person who can articulate their value in the fewest words wins. The person who can answer a question without turning it into a monologue wins. The person who can stay silent after stating their price instead of immediately offering a discount wins. This is hard for most people. Silence feels uncomfortable. We feel compelled to fill it. But silence after a statement of value is where deals close. When you state your price and then immediately start talking again, you're negotiating against yourself. When you state your price and then sit in the silence, you're letting the other person process, decide, and either accept or make a counteroffer. That silence is working for you, but you have to have the discipline to maintain it. Let me take you inside a real moment so you can feel what this looks like in practice. Sarah's sitting across from a potential client. He's asked about her rates for a 6-month consulting engagement. She's done this work before. She knows she's worth it, but her heart is pounding. She feels the fear rising. Every instinct is telling her to soften the number, to apologize for it, to offer a discount before he even reacts. She takes a breath, lets it settle. Then she says, "For a 6-month engagement with the deliverables we've discussed, my rate is $85,000. And then she stops. She doesn't explain why. She doesn't justify it. She doesn't list all the reasons he should say yes. She just lets the number sit there in the space between them. He's quiet for a moment. He's not angry. He's not shocked. He's just thinking. And in that silence, Sarah's fighting every urge to speak, to fill the gap, to make it easier for him. But she's learned this. She's practiced this. She knows the next person who speaks loses ground. So she waits. She maintains eye contact. She breathes. And she waits. Finally, he says, "That's higher than I expected." He's testing, seeing if she'll fold. And here's where most people lose the deal by trying too hard to keep it. They immediately drop the price, or offer payment plans, or start explaining all the ways they can reduce scope to reduce cost. They panic. But Sarah doesn't. She simply says, "I understand. This is the investment required for the results you've told me you need." And then she waits again, another pause, longer this time. He's recalculating. He's deciding. She's not helping him. She's not hurting him. She's just being clear. Finally, he nods. He says, "Okay, let's do it. When can we start?" Sarah just closed an $85,000 deal with fewer than 30 words. Not because she's a master manipulator, because she's trained her mouth to communicate value without apology, because she's trained her mind to stay calm under pressure, and because she knows her worth, which means her money mastery is strong enough to let her walk away if the number doesn't work. That's what mastery looks like in real time, and it's available to you, but you have to do the work. Now let's talk about strategic silence. This is one of the most powerful communication tools you have, and almost no one uses it. We live in a culture that values talking. We think the person who speaks the most, who has the most to say, who can explain things at length, is the most valuable. But in high-stakes situations, the opposite is true. The person who speaks less, who chooses their words carefully, who knows when to let silence do the work, that's the person who commands the room. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and in that discomfort, they reveal things. They fill the space. They over-explain. They make concessions. If you learn to be comfortable with silence, you gain a massive advantage in any negotiation, any difficult conversation, any situation where stakes are high and emotions are running. Practice this. In your next conversation where someone asks you a question, take 3 full seconds before you answer. Just 3 seconds. It will feel like an eternity. But when you think, "I'm not good enough for that opportunity," whose voice is that? Is it your voice based on current evidence and reality? Or is it your father's voice from when you were 12, telling you to be more realistic? When you think, "I can't charge that much, people won't pay it," whose voice is that? Is it based on market research and testing? Or is it an assumption you inherited from growing up around people who struggled with money? This is unsettling work. Because what you'll discover is that a huge percentage of your thoughts aren't actually yours. They're borrowed. They're inherited. They're echoes of other people's limitations, fears, and beliefs. And you've been living as if they're objective truth, as if they're reality. But they're not. They're just programming, and programming can be changed. Let me give you a specific example because this gets abstract quickly if we don't ground it. There's a thought pattern called the scarcity loop. It goes like this. You think about raising your rates or pursuing a bigger opportunity, and immediately your mind starts generating reasons why it won't work. There aren't enough clients who can afford that. The economy is terrible right now. People in my industry don't make that kind of money. I don't have the credentials that justify that price. On and on and on. And here's what's happening underneath that thought stream. Your mind is protecting you from risk. It's trying to keep you safe. It's operating from a scarcity model that says resources are limited, opportunities are rare, and if you reach too high, you'll fail and lose what you already have. This model made sense for your ancestors, when resources actually were scarce, when risks often meant death, when staying small and safe increased survival odds. But in the modern economy, the scarcity model is killing you. It's keeping you small when there's room to grow. It's making you play defense when offense is the path to wealth. But you can't just think your way out of scarcity thinking. Positive affirmations don't work. Telling yourself I am abundant while your bank account says otherwise just creates cognitive dissonance. The way you change scarcity thinking is by changing your behavior and letting your mind catch up. You start acting as if abundance is true. You gather evidence through action, and your mind revises its model based on the new data. This means you have to raise your rates before you feel ready. You have to pursue the bigger opportunity before you feel qualified. You have to spend money on yourself, on your education, on your business, even when scarcity thinking is screaming that you can't afford it. And when you do, when you take the action anyway and it works out, your mind gets new information. Oh, apparently the scarcity model was wrong. Apparently people will pay that rate. Apparently the opportunity was available. Let me update my assumptions. This is how you reprogram your mind. Not through wishful thinking, through contrary action that produces contrary evidence. Now let's talk about catastrophizing. This is one of the most expensive mental habits you can have. Catastrophizing is when you take a potential negative outcome and spiral it into a worst-case scenario that's completely disproportionate to reality. You send a proposal and don't hear back for 2 days, and your mind immediately jumps to, they hated it. They think I'm a joke. I'm going to lose this deal. I'll never get another client. I'll go bankrupt. I'll lose everything. See how insane that is when you write it out. But in your mind, it doesn't feel insane. It feels like reasonable planning. It feels like you're being realistic, preparing for the worst so you're not blindsided. But you're not preparing for the worst. You're creating anxiety about a future that will almost never happen. And that anxiety is draining your mental energy, your emotional capacity, and your ability to take the next action that would actually move you forward. Here's a fact that will change your relationship with catastrophizing. Track it for 30 days. Every time you catastrophize about something, write down what you feared would happen. Then 30 days later, go back and check. How many of those catastrophic scenarios actually occurred? The research on this is clear. Less than 3%. Less than 3% of the things you catastrophize about actually happen, which means you're spending 97% of your worry on things that never materialize. That's not planning. That's just suffering in advance. So what do you do instead? You practice worst-case planning without emotional flooding. You ask yourself, what's the actual worst case if this goes wrong? Not the dramatic catastrophic fantasy, the real worst case. And then you ask, can I handle that? Almost always the answer is yes. You can handle it. It wouldn't be fun, but you could handle it. And once you've established that you could handle the real worst case, your mind can relax. It doesn't need to keep spinning in anxiety. It knows you have a plan. Then there's comparison addiction. This is a modern epidemic, and it's getting worse every day because of social media. You're scrolling through Instagram and you see someone in your industry who just closed a massive deal, just bought a new house, just hit some milestone you haven't reached yet. And immediately, your mind starts the comparison game. They're ahead of me. I'm behind. I'm not successful enough. I should be further along by now. What's wrong with me? Here's what you're not seeing. You're comparing their highlight reel to your behind-the-scenes footage. You're comparing their best moment to your average Tuesday. You're comparing their external appearance of success to your internal experience of struggle. And it's not a fair comparison. It's not even a real comparison. You're comparing yourself to a curated illusion. But more fundamentally, comparison is a flawed game to play. Because there will always be someone ahead of you. Always. No matter what level you reach, there's another level above it. If your sense of worth, your measure of success, your feeling of adequacy depends on where you rank relative to others, you'll never be satisfied. You'll always be chasing. You'll always be inadequate. Because the finish line moves every time you get close to it. The only comparison that matters is you versus you. Are you better than you were 6 months ago? Are you earning more? Communicating more effectively? Managing your mind more skillfully than you were last year? That's the only measurement that means anything. Everything else is distraction. But you have to actively fight comparison thinking, because your brain is wired for it. We evolved in small tribes where social comparison was a survival tool, where you stood in the hierarchy, determined access to resources, mates, safety. But we don't live in small tribes anymore. We live in a globalized world where you can compare yourself to billions of people, most of whom you'll never meet. Most of whom are dealing with their own struggles that you can't see. So here's the practice. Every time you notice yourself comparing, stop. Literally interrupt the thought midstream and replace it with this question. What's one thing I can do today to improve my situation? Not to catch up to them, not to keep pace with some imaginary standard, just to move forward from where I am, and then do that thing. Let's talk about imposter syndrome, because this is costing people 6 figures annually and they don't even realize it. Imposter syndrome is the persistent belief that you're not as competent as others perceive you to be. It's the fear that you're going to be exposed as a fraud, that people are going to discover you don't actually know what you're doing, that you've somehow fooled everyone into thinking you're more qualified than you really are. Here's the truth about imposter syndrome. It's a sign that you're growing. It's a sign that you're operating at the edge of your current capabilities. It's a sign that you're stretching into new territory. People who never experience imposter syndrome are either delusionally overconfident or they've stopped growing. So the feeling itself isn't the problem. The problem is what you do with it. Most people let imposter syndrome keep them small. They don't raise their rates because they don't feel like they deserve it yet. They don't pursue bigger opportunities because they don't feel qualified enough. They don't position themselves as experts because they still feel like students. And while they're waiting to feel ready, other people with half their skill and twice their confidence are taking the opportunities and making the money. Here's what changed my relationship with imposter syndrome forever. A mentor told me, you don't feel like an imposter because you're unqualified. You feel like an imposter because you haven't integrated your qualifications into your identity yet. You've built the skills. You've produced the results. You've accumulated the experience. But your self-concept is lagging behind your actual competence. And until you update that self-concept, you'll keep feeling like a fraud even when you're not. So how do you update it? You act as if. You behave like the person who is qualified for the opportunity you want. You speak like the expert you actually are. You charge the rates that reflect your value, and you do it before you feel ready. Because you'll never feel ready. The feeling follows the action, not the other way around. Take a moment and visualize something with me. I want you to imagine yourself 5 years from now. You've mastered your mouth. You've mastered your mind. You've mastered your money. What does your life look like? See yourself in a typical workday. Where are you? What are you doing? Who are you working with? Notice how you speak. Your words are clear, confident, precise. You don't hedge. You don't apologize. You don't Now let's get into the practical mechanics of money, because this is where most people's wheels come off completely. They can work on their communication. They can work on their mindset. But when it comes to money, they stay in deliberate ignorance. And that ignorance is expensive. Money truth. This is where we stop with the wishful thinking and look at what the numbers actually say. Because your bank account is a report card. It's not lying to you. It's not being unfair. It's reflecting back the quality of your decisions over time. And if you don't like what it's telling you, hiding from it doesn't help. You have to look at it clearly, understand what it's revealing, and change the behaviors that are creating the result. So let's do this right now. Not later. Not when you feel ready. Now. What's your true income? Not your gross, your net. What do you actually keep after taxes, after business expenses, after all the costs of generating that income? Most people have a number in their head that makes them feel good. But when you actually do the math, it's 30 to 40% less than they thought. Now look at your spending. Pull up the last 90 days of transactions, every single one, and categorize them. How much went to necessities? How much went to investments that will generate future income? How much went to experiences and enjoyment that genuinely added value to your life? And how much, be honest, went to things you can barely remember now? Convenience purchases, emotional spending, keeping up with other people's lifestyles. This exercise is uncomfortable, I know, because it reveals the gap between who you think you are and how you actually behave with money. You think you're financially responsible, and then you see that you spent $4,000 last quarter on things you don't value. You think you're investing in yourself, and then you realize most of your spending is consumption, not investment. You think you're making progress, and then you calculate that at your current savings rate, you're 14 years away from even 6 months of emergency savings. The numbers don't lie. And the first step to money mastery is stopping the lying you've been doing to yourself. This isn't about judgment. This is about data. You can't change what you don't measure. You can't improve what you don't acknowledge. So acknowledge it. Look at the real numbers. Feel the discomfort. And then use that discomfort as fuel. Because here's what happens when you face money truth. You stop being a victim of your finances. You stop saying, I don't know where the money goes. You stop being surprised by expenses you should have anticipated. You start making conscious choices instead of unconscious ones. And conscious choices compound into completely different financial outcomes. Now let's talk about earning optimization, because most people are leaving massive amounts of money on the table, and they don't even know it. They're underpricing their services. They're working with low-value clients. They're exchanging time for money instead of building leverage. And then they wonder why they're exhausted but never getting ahead. The value ladder is a concept you need to understand. Every market has a range of pricing. There are budget options, mid-tier options, and premium options, and most people position themselves in the middle or at the bottom because they're afraid of losing clients if they charge too much. But here's what they don't realize. The clients at the bottom of the value ladder are the most difficult to work with and the least profitable. They demand the most, complain the most, and pay the least. The clients at the top of the value ladder are easier to work with, more respectful of your expertise, and willing to pay premium prices for premium results. So why do people stay at the bottom? Fear. They're afraid that if they raise their prices, they'll lose all their clients and have no income. But that fear is based on a false assumption, the assumption that their current clients are their only possible clients. That if these people won't pay more, no one will. But that's not how markets work. When you raise your prices, you lose some clients. That's true, but you don't lose all of them. And the ones you keep are paying more, which means you're making the same money or more for less work. And you've created space in your schedule to find the clients who can and will pay your new rates. Let me give you the framework I use. Every 6 months, raise your rates by 15 to 20% for new clients. You don't have to tell existing clients unless you want to. But every new project, every new engagement, new rate. And you do this regardless of whether you feel ready, regardless of whether you think you're worth it, regardless of whether you're scared. You just do it. And here's what happens. Some people say no. That's fine. They weren't your ideal clients anyway. Some people say yes without even blinking. And those yeses teach your mind that you were underpriced, that your fear was unfounded, that the market will bear higher rates than you thought. Over time, this systematic price increasing transforms your business and your income. Because you're not just making more per project. You're attracting different clients. You're working with people who value what you do. You're building a reputation as a premium provider. And that reputation feeds back into higher rates. It's a virtuous cycle, but you have to start it. And you start it by raising your rates before you think you should. Now let's talk about the other side of the money equation, spending mastery, because you can earn $1 million a year and still be broke if you spend $1,050,000. Income without spending discipline is just a bigger treadmill. You're running faster, generating more, but you're not actually getting anywhere. Spending mastery isn't about deprivation. It's not about living like you're poor so you can die rich. It's about aligning your spending with your actual values and eliminating everything else. Most people's spending is completely misaligned with what they say they care about. They say they value freedom, but they spend money on things that lock them into jobs they hate. They say they value health, but they spend money on convenience and comfort that undermines their health. They say they value experiences, but they spend money on possessions they barely use. So here's the audit. Look at your spending from the last quarter. For every significant expense, ask yourself, does this align with my stated values and goals? If the answer is yes, great. Keep doing it. If the answer is no, cut it. It's that simple. Not easy, but simple. And when you do this ruthlessly, you discover something shocking. You can probably cut 20 to 30% of your spending without any meaningful decrease in quality of life. That's not sacrifice. That's efficiency. That's eliminating waste. And here's what you do with that freed up money. You don't just let it disappear into more random spending. You automate it into savings or investment. You pay yourself first. This is the single most important money habit you can develop. Before you pay bills, before you spend on anything discretionary, you pay yourself. 10% minimum. 20% if you can manage it, and you do it automatically, so you never see that money in your checking account. You never get the chance to spend it. This feels restrictive at first, like you're limiting yourself. But what you're actually doing is building a foundation that will eventually set you free. Because that automated savings compounds, it grows. It becomes your emergency fund so you don't panic when unexpected expenses hit. It becomes your opportunity fund so you can invest when the right chance appears. It becomes your freedom fund so you can walk away from situations that don't serve you. That's not restriction. That's liberation. But here's the thing about money that most people don't understand until it's too late. Money is not just a tool for buying things. Money is a mirror. It shows you who you are. It reveals your priorities, your fears, your discipline, your beliefs. And if you don't like what it's showing you, you can't fix it by making more money. You fix it by becoming a different person. A person who makes different choices. A person who values different things. A person who has mastered the forces that create money instead of being ruled by them. So let's talk about wealth building, because earning and saving are just the foundation. Real wealth comes from making your money work harder than you do. This is leverage. This is compound interest. This is the difference between trading time for money and building systems that generate income whether you're working or not. But most people never get to this stage. They're stuck in the earning and spending cycle, never building up enough capital to invest, never developing the knowledge to invest wisely, never taking the risk because they're afraid of losing what little they have. And I get it. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, if you have no margin, if you're already stressed about money, the idea of investing feels impossible. But here's the hard truth. If you don't figure out how to make your money work for you, you'll be working for money for the rest of your life. There's no other path to financial freedom. So where do you start? First, you build your foundation. That means emergency fund. 6 months of expenses in cash where you can access it immediately. This is non-negotiable. Before you invest in anything, before you start a business, before you take any financial risk, you need this safety net. Because without it, the first emergency that hits will derail everything. You'll have to go into debt, which will cost you more than any investment could gain you. Once you have your emergency fund, then you start investing. And for most people, the path. The key with investing is consistency, not timing, not picking the perfect moment to get in or out. Just consistent contributions over time, regardless of what the market is doing. Because market timing is gambling, and you're not a gambler. You're a builder. You're building wealth slowly, systematically, intelligently. And if you do that for 20 or 30 years, you'll end up in the top 10% of wealth holders. Not because you got lucky, because you did the boring work that most people won't do. Now let's talk about integration, because this is where everything comes together. This is where mouth, mind, and money stop being 3 separate domains you're working on and become one unified system that amplifies your results in every area of life. The compound effect is real. When you master your mouth, you start communicating more effectively, which opens opportunities, which increases your income, which gives your mind evidence that you're valuable, which makes you communicate with even more confidence. When you master your mind, you make better decisions, which improves your financial outcomes, which reduces stress, which makes it easier to maintain mental clarity. When you master your money, you have resources to invest in yourself, which improves your skills, which enhances your market value, which allows you to command higher prices with your improved mouth skills. See how they feed each other? That's the upward spiral. That's what you're building, not isolated improvements. A system where every gain in one area accelerates gains in the others. This is how transformation happens faster than seems possible. This is how people double their income in 6 months. This is how people go from anxious and unclear to confident and focused seemingly overnight. They didn't change one thing. They aligned 3 things, and the alignment created exponential results. But integration doesn't happen automatically. You have to design for it. You have to deliberately connect your work in these 3 domains. So here's how you do that. Every week, you're going to do 3 things. First, you're going to practice one mouth skill. Maybe it's eliminating filler words. Maybe it's setting a boundary cleanly. Maybe it's stating your value without apologizing. Pick one. Practice it in real situations. Get feedback. Improve. Second, you're going to install one mind upgrade. Maybe it's catching yourself catastrophizing and replacing it with realistic planning. Maybe it's noticing imposter syndrome and acting anyway. Maybe it's stopping comparison thinking and focusing on your own progress. Pick one. Practice it daily. Track it. Third, you're going to make one money decision that reflects your new level of mastery. Maybe it's raising your rates with a new client. Maybe it's cutting an expense that doesn't serve you. Maybe it's automating savings. Pick one. Implement it. Measure the result. And here's the critical part. At the end of each week, you're going to connect the dots. You're going to write down how the mouth skill affected your mindset, how the mind upgrade affected your financial decisions, how the money decision changed what you believe is possible. You're making the connections explicit. You're training your brain to see the system instead of the parts. And that systemic thinking is what allows you to operate at a level most people never reach. Let me tell you about Jessica because her story illustrates this perfectly. She was a graphic designer making $40,000 a year. Talented, hardworking, but completely stuck. Her mouth was apologetic. Her mind was full of limiting beliefs. Her money was a source of constant stress. We worked together for 6 months. Not on design skills. On the Trinity. We started with her mouth. She was using language that screamed low value. I'm just a freelancer. I hope you like the design. Let me know if you want me to change anything. My rates are flexible. Every sentence was undercutting her worth. So we rewrote her communication. I'm a brand designer specializing in premium positioning. Here's the strategic direction for your visual identity. My rate for this scope is X. No hedging. No apologizing. Just clear, confident communication. At first, it felt fake to her. She said, but that's not who I am. And I told her, correct. That's not who you've been, but it's who you're becoming. Your old communication reflected your old identity. Your new communication will create your new identity. So she practiced. She sent emails with the new language even though it felt uncomfortable. She stated her rates without flinching even though she was terrified. And you know what happened? People responded differently. They took her more seriously. They paid her rates without negotiating. They referred her to higher-level clients, and that external feedback started changing her internal beliefs. Her mind started updating its models. Oh, apparently I can charge these rates. Apparently clients do value what I do. Apparently I'm not an imposter. I'm just someone who was underpricing myself. The evidence was changing the story, and as her income increased, she started making different money decisions. She stopped saying yes to every low-paying project out of fear. She invested in better tools. She hired help for the parts of the business she wasn't good at. She started saving, and as her bank account grew, her confidence grew with it, which made her communication even stronger, which attracted even better clients, which increased her income more. Within 6 months, she'd tripled her income. Within a year, she was making 6 figures. Same person, same skills, different mastery. That's what's possible when all 3 forces align. So here's my question for you. What would your life look like if you tripled your income in the next 6 months? Not through working more hours, through mastering the forces that control your results. What would change? Where would you live? What would you do with your time? Who would you become? And more importantly, what's stopping you from starting that process right now? Not 6 months from now when you feel ready. Right now, today. What's the one thing you could do in the next 24 hours that would move you toward mastery in one of these 3 domains? Because here's the truth. You're not going to feel ready. You're never going to feel qualified enough, confident enough, prepared enough. The feeling of readiness is a myth. It doesn't exist. What exists is action and the confidence that follows action. So you act first. You act before you're ready, and you let the results teach you that you were more ready than you thought. Let me give you something tactical you can implement immediately. The 30-day intensive. This is how you jumpstart the integration process. For the next 30 days, you're going to do 3 things every single day without exception. For your mouth, you're going to eliminate all filler words. Every time you catch yourself about to say like or I think, you're going to pause instead. Just pause. Let the silence sit there. Then continue with a clear, direct statement. This is going to feel awkward at first. You're going to mess up. But by day 30, your default communication will be noticeably cleaner and more authoritative. For your mind, you're going to do a daily thought audit. 10 minutes at the end of each day. You're going to write down the 3 most significant thoughts you had that day, the ones that affected your decisions, your mood, your actions. And for each one, you're going to ask, is this thought serving me? Is it based on evidence or is it based on fear? If it's not serving you, you're going to write down a replacement thought. Not a positive affirmation that you don't believe, just a more accurate, more useful way of thinking about the situation. For your money, you're going to track every single dollar. Everything you earn, everything you spend, and most importantly, how you feel when you earn it or spend it. You're going to notice the emotional patterns around money. Do you spend more when you're stressed? Do you avoid looking at your account when things are tight? Do you feel guilty when you invest in yourself? These patterns are running your financial life, and you can't change what you don't see. 30 days. 3 practices. No days off. And I promise you, if you actually do this, your life will look different on day 31. Not slightly different, dramatically different, because you will have reprogrammed the 3 operating systems that control your results. But here's the thing about change. It's not comfortable. It's not easy. And your current environment is going to resist it. The people around you are used to you communicating a certain way. They're used to you thinking a certain way. They're used to you being at a certain financial level. And when you start changing, when you start speaking with more authority, thinking with more clarity, making more money, some of them are going to try to pull you back. Not because they're bad people, because change in you highlights their lack of change. And that's uncomfortable for them, so you need to be prepared for that. You need to understand that transformation is often lonely, not forever, but in the beginning, because you're moving into a new version of yourself that doesn't quite fit with your old social environment yet, and you haven't found your new tribe yet. So there's this gap where you feel like you don't belong anywhere. That gap is normal. It's part of the process. And if you can push through it without retreating back to your old identity, you'll emerge into a completely different life. I want you to think about the people in your life who you admire, the ones who seem to have their act together, the ones who are successful in ways you want to be successful. Do you think they got there by accident? Do you think they just got lucky breaks that you didn't get? Or do you? Not someday. Not when circumstances are better. Not when you have more time, more money, more confidence. Now, with what you have, from where you are, because the perfect moment doesn't exist. There's only this moment, and this moment is asking you a question. Are you going to keep being ruled by forces you don't control? Or are you going to master them? Your mouth is either working for you or against you. Right now, in every conversation, in every email, in every presentation, it's either opening doors or closing them. It's either building your credibility or eroding it. And you can change what it's doing starting with the very next words that come out of your mouth. Your mind is either serving you or sabotaging you. Right now, with every thought, with every belief, with every internal narrative, it's either moving you toward your goals or keeping you stuck in place. And you can change what it's doing starting with the very next thought you choose to believe. Your money is either growing or shrinking. Right now, with every decision, with every purchase, with every opportunity you pursue or avoid. It's either compounding in your favor or working against you. And you can change what it's doing starting with the very next financial decision you make. 3 forces, 3 choices, 1 life. And the trajectory of that life is determined by whether you master these forces or let them master you. So here's what I want you to do right now. Not after you finish listening to this. Right now. Pause. Take out your phone or a piece of paper and write down 3 commitments. 1 for your mouth. 1 for your mind, 1 for your money. Specific, measurable, something you're going to start doing immediately and continue doing until it becomes automatic. For your mouth, maybe it's I will eliminate all apologetic language from my professional communication for the next 30 days. For your mind, maybe it's I will catch myself catastrophizing and replace it with realistic planning 3 times per day. For your money, maybe it's I will track every dollar I spend and the emotion behind it for the next 90 days. Whatever you choose, write it down. Because written commitments are exponentially more powerful than mental intentions. Your brain takes written words more seriously. It engages with them differently. And when you write something down, you've moved from thinking about change to initiating change. That shift, that moment of commitment, is where transformation begins. And then do one more thing. Share those commitments with someone. Not someone who's going to coddle you or let you off the hook. Someone who will hold you accountable. Someone who will check in with you in 30 days and ask if you actually did what you said you'd do. Because private commitments are easy to break. Public commitments, even if it's just one other person, create healthy pressure that keeps you moving forward when motivation fades. Because here's the reality. Motivation is going to fade. Enthusiasm is going to wane. There will be days when you don't want to do this work. Days when it feels pointless. Days when you question whether it's worth the effort. And on those days, motivation won't save you. Discipline will. The systems you've built will. The commitments you've made will. That's why we're not relying on feeling ready or feeling motivated. We're relying on structure, repetition, and accountability. Now let's talk about maintenance. Because one of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking that once they reach a certain level of mastery, they can coast. They can't. Mastery isn't a destination. It's a practice. It's something you have to maintain through consistent action or it degrades. Your mouth skills atrophy if you stop using them. Your mental clarity fades if you stop guarding it. Your money discipline slips if you stop tracking it. So you need maintenance routines, non-negotiable practices that keep you at your current level and allow you to keep improving. Here's what that looks like practically. For your mouth, you need ongoing feedback. You can't hear yourself the way others hear you. You need to record yourself regularly. Listen back to sales calls, presentations, important conversations. Notice where you're still using filler language. Notice where you're over-explaining. Notice where you're apologizing unnecessarily. And then practice the cleaner version until it becomes automatic. For your mind, you need regular thought audits. Weekly at minimum. Sit down and review the major thoughts that drove your behavior that week. Were they useful thoughts? Were they accurate thoughts? Were they thoughts that moved you toward your goals? If not, what would be better thoughts? This isn't toxic positivity. This is cognitive maintenance. You're just keeping your operating system clean. For your money, you need monthly reviews. No exceptions. You look at what came in, what went out, and where you are relative to your goals. You celebrate wins. You identify problems. You make adjustments. This isn't punishment. This is information. And information is power if you're willing to look at it honestly. These maintenance routines take less than an hour per week combined. But that hour is the difference between sustained transformation and slow regression back to old patterns. Most people change for a few months, get excited about their progress, then stop doing the practices that created the progress. And they wonder why they end up back where they started. You won't make that mistake, because you understand that mastery is maintenance, and maintenance is forever. Let's talk about what happens when all three forces align at the highest level. Because this is where things get interesting. This is where you stop playing defense and start playing offense with your life. This is where you stop reacting to circumstances and start creating them. When your mouth is mastered, you can shape reality with language. You can pitch ideas that get funded. You can negotiate deals that others would accept as given. You can influence outcomes just by how you frame them. When your mind is mastered, you can stay calm in chaos. You can see opportunities that others miss because they're too stressed to think clearly. You can make decisions quickly and correctly because your thinking is clear and your judgment is sound. When your money is mastered, you have options. You can walk away from bad situations. You can invest in good opportunities. You can afford to be patient, which is often the difference between good returns and great returns, but it's the integration that's powerful. It's when all three work together that exponential results become possible, because your clear communication opens doors. Your clear thinking helps you walk through those doors strategically. And your financial resources allow you to capitalize on the opportunities you find. That's not luck. That's systematic advantage created through mastery. And here's the beautiful part. Once you've built this system, once you've mastered these three forces, you can apply it to anything. Want to improve your relationships? Same system. Clear communication, clear thinking, clear boundaries around time and energy. Want to build a business? Same system. Articulate your value, maintain strategic clarity, manage resources intelligently. Want to make a career change? Same system. Position yourself effectively, manage the mental game of transition, ensure you have the financial runway to make the move. The Trinity isn't just about making more money, though that will happen. It's about building a life where you're in control instead of being controlled, where you're designing your reality instead of accepting what's given, where you're moving toward what you want instead of running from what you fear, and that life is available to you. Not 5 years from now. Not after you achieve some prerequisite level of success. Now, today. Starting with your next conversation. Starting with your next thought. Starting with your next financial decision. The forces are already there. They're already operating. All you have to do is master them. So let me ask you one more time. Which force is currently ruling you? Is it your mouth, constantly undermining your worth through poor communication? Is it your mind, keeping you trapped in limiting beliefs and catastrophic thinking? Is it your money, controlling every decision through scarcity and fear? And now that you know, now that you've identified it, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to close this out, feel briefly inspired, and then return to the same patterns that created your current results? Or are you going to take the next 30 days and systematically dismantle the force that's been holding you back? Because transformation isn't a mystery. It's a methodology. It's not about finding your purpose or waiting for your breakthrough moment. It's about mastering the fundamentals that actually control your results. Your mouth, your mind, your money. Master all three or continue being ruled by them. The choice has always been yours. The only question is whether you're finally ready to make it. Your next conversation is an opportunity to practice mouth mastery. Your next thought is an opportunity to practice mind mastery. Your next financial decision is an opportunity to practice money mastery. 3 opportunities. Every day. Multiple times per day. Most people waste them. They communicate sloppily, think carelessly, and spend mindlessly. And then they wonder why their life doesn't change. But you're not most people. If you were, you wouldn't have made it this far. You wouldn't have invested this time in learning these principles. Something in you knows that you're capable of more. Something in you recognizes that the gap between where you are and where you could be isn't about luck or talent or circumstances. It's about mastery. And now you know exactly what to master, so go master it. Then, you're going to do your first mouth practice. Out loud, even if you feel ridiculous, you're going to state 3 facts about your value. not affirmations, not things you wish were true. Facts. I have 10 years of experience in my field. I have solved this specific problem for 12 clients. I delivered measurable results in my last 3 projects. Say them out loud. Hear your voice stating facts without apology. This is training your mouth to communicate value as neutral truth, not as bragging or hoping. Then you're going to do your money check-in. Pull up your bank account. Look at the balance. Don't react emotionally. Just observe. Write down the number. Write down how looking at that number makes you feel. Anxious, ashamed, satisfied, neutral. The feeling is data. It's showing you what your current relationship with money actually is, not what you think it is. That's your morning routine. 20 minutes total. Thought audit, mouth practice, money check-in. And you're going to do this every single morning for 30 days. No exceptions. Not on weekends. Not when you're traveling. Not when you're tired. Every single day. Because mastery isn't built in the moments when you feel like it. It's built in the moments when you don't feel like it, but you do it anyway. Day 2. You're going to add your first boundary practice. At some point during the day, someone is going to ask you for something. Your time, your expertise, your energy, something. And you're going to practice saying no without over-explaining. Here's the script. Thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not able to take that on right now. That's it. No apology. No lengthy explanation about why you're busy. No offer to do it later or find someone else who can help. Just a clean no. This is going to feel brutal. Your conditioning is going to scream at you. You're being rude. They're going to be mad. They're going to think you're selfish. Let those thoughts pass through without acting on them. Because what you're actually doing is training people how to treat you. You're establishing that your time has value. That your yes means something because your no is real. And people will respect you more for this, not less, even if it doesn't feel that way in the moment. Day 3 introduces your first financial audit. You're going to track every single purchase you make today. Not just the big ones, everything, the coffee, the lunch, the app subscription you forgot you had. And for each purchase, you're going to write down the amount and answer one question. Did this move me toward my goals or away from them? Not whether you enjoyed it, not whether you deserved it, just whether it was an investment in your future or a distraction from it. Most people are shocked when they do this exercise. They discover they're spending $30 to $50 a day on things that don't matter. That's $900 to $1,500 a month. That's $10,000 to $18,000 a year. Money that could have been invested, saved, used to build something real. But instead, it's disappearing into convenience, comfort, and unconscious consumption. Day 4 is where you start practicing strategic silence. Today, in every conversation you have, you're going to pause for 3 full seconds before responding to any question. This is harder than it sounds. Your instinct is to fill the space immediately, to show you're engaged, to demonstrate you have an answer, but that instinct is making you reactive instead of strategic. When you pause, you give yourself time to think. You signal that you're considering your words carefully, and you create the impression of depth and thoughtfulness that Rush's answers never convey. Try it in a low-stakes conversation first. When someone asks, "How's your day?" pause 3 seconds before answering. When someone asks for your opinion on something, pause 3 seconds before giving it. Watch what happens in the other person. They lean in. They pay more attention, because the pause signals that what's coming next matters. Day 5 brings your first rate increase conversation. If you're employed, this might feel premature, but it's not. You're going to have a conversation with your manager or a client or a prospect where you position yourself differently than you have before. Not asking for a raise yet, just planting seeds. You're going to mention a recent win. You're going to reference your impact on the business. You're going to use language like "I'm focused on driving results in X area," because it directly affects the bottom line. This is reconnaissance. You're testing how people respond when you talk about yourself in terms of value delivered, not just tasks completed. For the self-employed, Day 5 is simpler and scarier. You're going to quote a new rate to someone, 15% higher than what you charged your last client. You're not going to explain it. You're not going to justify it. You're going to state it as if it's the most natural thing in the world. My rate for this scope is X. And then you're going to practice that silence we talked about on Day 4. Let them process. Let them decide. Don't negotiate against yourself. Day 6 introduces the catastrophe log. Every time you notice yourself catastrophizing today, you're going to write it down. What did you fear? What was the worst-case scenario your mind created? Be specific. Then, next to it, you're going to write down what actually happened. At the end of the day, you'll have a list. And what you'll notice is that almost none of your catastrophic predictions came true. Your mind was generating suffering about futures that never materialized. This log becomes evidence you can use to interrupt catastrophic thinking in the future. When your mind starts spiraling, you can remind it, you've been wrong about this 97% of the time. Why should I believe you now? Day 7 is your first weekly review. This is where integration happens. You sit down with your journal or your laptop and you review the last 6 days. What mouth practices did you actually do? What felt uncomfortable? What felt empowering? What mind patterns did you notice? Which thoughts served you? Which ones sabotaged you? What money decisions did you make? Did you track your spending? Did you have the boundary conversation? Did you quote the higher rate? And here's the critical question you're going to answer. How did improvements in one domain affect the other two? Did speaking with more authority make you feel more confident mentally? Did that mental confidence make you bolder with money? Did making a smart financial decision reduce your anxiety and improve your communication? You're training yourself to see the connections, to recognize that these aren't 3 separate projects. They're one integrated system. Now let's talk about what happens when you fail. Because you will. Day 8 or day 11 or day 19, you're going to skip the morning routine. You're going to over-explain when you should have stayed silent. You're going to spend unconsciously. You're going to catastrophize without catching it. And in that moment, you'll be tempted to conclude that you're not disciplined enough, that this doesn't work, that you should just give up. That's the relapse moment. And this is where most people quit. They think transformation should be linear. They think once they start improving, they should improve consistently without backsliding. But that's not how behavior change works. Change happens in waves. You improve, you slip back slightly. You improve more. You slip back again, but not as far. You improve even more. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And the people who succeed are the people who expect the backsliding and have a plan for it. Here's your relapse-proofing protocol. When you notice you've skipped a practice or reverted to an old pattern, you don't spiral into self-judgment. You do 3 things immediately. First, you acknowledge it, out loud if possible. I skipped my morning routine today. I over-explained in that conversation. I spent $40 on things I don't value. Just state the fact without making it mean anything about your character. Second, you reconnect with your why. Why are you doing this work? Not the surface reason, the deep reason. What does your life look like if you master these 3 forces? What does it look like if you don't? Spend 60 seconds visualizing both futures. Feel the difference. Let that difference pull you back into action. Third, you do the next right thing. Not perfectly, not making up for lost time. Just the next right thing. If you skipped your morning routine, do a 5-minute version right now. If you over-explained, send a follow-up message that's clean and brief. If you spent unconsciously, track the rest of today's spending with extra attention. The next right thing breaks the spiral and puts you back on the path. This protocol needs to become automatic, because relapses will happen. The question is whether they derail you completely or whether you have a system for getting back on track within hours instead of weeks. Let me tell you about David because his story illustrates the relapse and recovery cycle perfectly. David was an executive coach charging $200 per hour. Solid rate for someone starting out, but nowhere near what his level of experience commanded. We worked on his Trinity for 3 months. His communication got sharper. His mindset shifted from scarcity to abundance. His financial tracking revealed he was undercharging by at least 50%. He raised his rates to $300 per hour. 2 clients accepted without blinking. 1 client negotiated to $275. He felt invincible, and then he got a referral from someone who'd been a great source of business in the past. This prospect asked about rates. David said $300. The prospect hesitated, said that was higher than expected, asked if there was any. Here's what David did next. He sent a follow-up email to that prospect. Short, clean, professional. After reflecting on our conversation, I realized I wasn't clear. My rate is $300 per hour for the value and results I deliver. If that works for your budget, I'd love to work together. If not, I understand and I'm happy to refer you to other qualified coaches. The prospect said no, and that no was a gift, because it taught David's nervous system that he could hold his boundary, lose a deal, and survive. That nothing catastrophic happened, that he was fine. And 2 days later, a different prospect reached out, heard the $300 rate, and said yes immediately. David's mind updated its model. Oh, apparently $300 is the right rate. Apparently the market will bear it. Apparently I don't have to fold when someone pushes back. That's the relapse and recovery cycle. You slip, you catch yourself, you correct. And each time you correct, you get stronger. The neural pathway of the new pattern gets reinforced. The old pattern gets weaker. Eventually, the new pattern becomes automatic, but only if you have a system for handling the relapses instead of letting them spiral into total abandonment of the work. So let's build out your day-by-day micro-challenges for the rest of the 30-day intensive. Because the first 7 days were just the foundation. Now we layer in more complexity. Day 8, you're going to practice saying your rates or stating your value to a mirror. I know this sounds absurd. Do it anyway. Stand in front of a mirror, make eye contact with yourself, and say out loud, "My rate is X," or "I deliver X value through Y specific outcomes." Say it 10 times. Notice what happens in your body. Does your voice waver? Do you rush through it? Do you break eye contact? Those physical responses are showing you where the resistance lives. And you can't change what you can't see. Day 9 introduces your first decision velocity challenge. You're going to make 10 small decisions today without deliberation. Not life-altering decisions. Small ones. What to eat for lunch. Which task to do first. Whether to take the call now or later. Normally you might spend 5 or 10 minutes weighing options on these trivial choices. Today you make them in 10 seconds or less. This is training your brain to trust its intuition and move quickly. Because analysis paralysis on small decisions is practice for analysis paralysis on big ones. Day 10 is your first comparison fast. Today you don't open social media. Not Instagram, not Facebook, not LinkedIn, not Twitter, nothing. If you need to post something for business, use a scheduler and don't look at your feed. Just for today, you're going to experience what it's like to go through your day without comparing yourself to anyone. Most people are shocked by how much mental energy this frees up, how much more present they feel, how much less inadequate they feel. The comparison machine runs constantly in the background, draining your confidence without you even noticing. Turn it off for one day and feel the difference. Day 11 brings your first spending freeze. Today you buy nothing except absolute necessities. No coffee out, no lunch out, no impulse purchases, no convenience spending. You eat what's in your house. You use what you already have. This isn't about deprivation, it's about awareness. Most people are completely unconscious of how much they spend daily on non-essentials. One day of zero discretionary spending highlights exactly how much you normally spend without thinking, and that awareness is the first step to changing the pattern. Day 12 is your first high-stakes communication test. You're going to have a difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's setting a boundary with a client who's overstepping. Maybe it's addressing an issue with a colleague. Maybe it's asking for something you need. Whatever it is, you're going to prepare by writing out 3 key points you need to communicate. Then you're going to practice saying them in the fewest words possible. Clarity and brevity. That's the goal. And then you're going to have the conversation today, not tomorrow, not next week. Today, day 13 introduces your first thought interruption practice. Every time you notice a limiting belief today, you're going to interrupt it physically. Snap your fingers, clap your hands. Literally say stop out loud if you're alone. The thought will sound like, I can't do this, or they won't pay that, or I'm not qualified. And the instant you notice it, physical interruption. This might sound silly, but the physical interrupt breaks the neural pattern. It stops the thought from completing its loop and reinforces the idea that you're in control of what you think, not the other way around. Day 14 is your mid-month audit. 2 weeks in, you sit down and measure your progress. What's changed in how you communicate? Can you state your value without hedging? Can you set boundaries without over-explaining? What's changed in your thinking? Are you catastrophizing less? Are you making decisions faster? What's changed with your money? Are you tracking consistently? Have you cut any wasteful spending? Have you increased any income? And here's the most important question. What's the one practice that's made the biggest difference so far? Because that's the practice you need to double down on in the second half of the month. Not spread yourself thin trying to do everything perfectly. Focus on the highest leverage practice and make it bulletproof. Day 15 introduces the rate raise execution. If you haven't actually implemented a rate increase yet, today's the day. You're going to email 3 prospects or current clients with your new pricing structure. You're going to use the language you've been practicing, not apologetic, not over-explained, just clear and confident. My current rate for this type of engagement is X. The point isn't whether all 3 say yes. The point is you put the new rate in writing and hit send. You made it real, and real rates produce real feedback that hypothetical rates never do. Day 16 is your first energy audit. Today, you're going to notice who and what drains your energy versus who and what fills it. After every interaction, after every task, after every activity, you're going to write down whether you feel more energized or more depleted. At the end of the day, you'll have a clear map. And that map is going to reveal something critical. You're probably spending enormous amounts of time with energy vampires and energy-draining activities while telling yourself you don't have a choice. But you do. And identifying the drains is the first step to eliminating them. Day 17 brings your first future self letter. You're going to write a letter from yourself 5 years from now to yourself today. The future you has mastered all three forces. The future you has the income, the confidence, the freedom you're building toward. What does future you want current you to know? What advice does future you have? What did future you learn along the way that current you needs to hear right now? This letter becomes a reference point. When you're struggling, when you're doubting, you can read it and remember where you're going. Day 18 introduces the discomfort practice. Today, you're going to do one thing that makes you uncomfortable specifically because it makes you uncomfortable. Not dangerous, not harmful, just uncomfortable. Maybe it's reaching out to someone you admire and asking for 15 minutes of their time. Maybe it's posting about your work publicly. Maybe it's stating your opinion in a meeting where you normally stay quiet. The specific action matters less than the principle. You're training your nervous system that discomfort isn't dangerous, that you can feel uncomfortable and do the thing anyway. That growth lives on the other side of discomfort. Day 19 is your second money check-in. You look at your account again. Compare it to day 1. What's changed? Probably not a huge amount in just 19 days. But that's not the point. The point is you're building the habit of looking at your money regularly without emotional flooding. You're normalizing the relationship. You're making money a thing you manage instead of a thing you fear. Day 20 introduces your first gratitude practice with a twist. Most gratitude practices are generic. Today I'm grateful for my health, my family, sunshine. Fine, but not transformative. Today you're going to practice specific gratitude for evidence of your growth. I'm grateful that I held my boundary in that conversation yesterday without apologizing. I'm grateful that I caught myself catastrophizing and chose a different thought. I'm grateful that I tracked my spending for 20 days straight. This type of gratitude reinforces the changes you're making. It tells your brain these new patterns are good. Let's do more of this. Day 21 marks the 3-week point, and this is critical. Research shows that 21 days is when initial resistance starts to fade and practices start to feel more automatic. You're not at habit formation yet, that takes longer, but you're past the point where everything feels forced. So day 21 is where you add complexity. You're going to stack your practices. Morning routine, but now you add a 5-minute visualization of your day going exactly as you want it to. Thought audit, but now you identify which thought patterns showed up most this week and create a specific counterstatement. Money tracking, but now you also project forward. If I keep spending at this rate, where will I be in 90 days? If I keep earning at this rate, where will I be? The answers to those questions create urgency that generic tracking never does. Day 22 brings your second high-stakes communication test. But this time, the stakes are real. You're going to pitch. Day 24 introduces the investment decision. Today, you're going to spend money on something that scares you slightly because of the amount. A course, a certification, a coaching program, a tool that will improve your business, something where the price makes you hesitate, not because you can't afford it, but because your scarcity programming says it's too much. And you're going to override that programming and invest anyway. This is important. You're teaching your mind that investing in yourself is safe, that spending money on growth doesn't deplete you, it multiplies you. Day 25 brings the peer feedback practice. You're going to ask 3 people who interact with you professionally for honest feedback on one specific thing. How do I come across when I talk about my rates? Do I sound confident or apologetic? Be specific with your question. Tell them you're working on a particular skill and you need their honest observation. Most people are terrified of this practice because they're afraid of what they'll hear. But the feedback is gold. It shows you exactly where the gap is between your internal experience and your external communication. And you can't close a gap you can't see. Day 26 is your second spending freeze, but this time you raise the difficulty. Today, not only do you buy nothing discretionary, you also don't consume. No Netflix, no YouTube, no social media scrolling, no passive consumption of any kind, just creating and being. This is brutal for most people. It reveals how much of your time is spent numbing, distracting, avoiding. And when you remove all the escape hatches, you're left with yourself and your thoughts. That discomfort is data. It's showing you what you've been running from. Day 27 introduces the pre-mortem practice. This is different from catastrophizing. A pre-mortem is strategic. You imagine that 30 days from now, you've completely abandoned these practices and returned to your old patterns. What happened? What was the trigger? Was it a stressful week at work? Was it a financial setback? Was it someone criticizing you? Identify the most likely failure points, and then create specific plans for each one. If X happens, I will do Y instead of abandoning the work. This is how you relapse-proof. You plan for the failure points before they arrive. Day 28 is your second comparison fast, but longer. No social media for 48 hours. And during those 48 hours, you're going to journal about something you've noticed. When you're not constantly comparing yourself to others, what do you want? Not what you think you should want. Not what looks impressive. What do you actually want? This question often gets buried under the noise of comparison. 2 days of silence lets it surface. Day 29 brings your final integration practice. You're going to look back at the last 29 days and identify your 3 biggest wins. 1 in mouth mastery, 1 in mind mastery, 1 in money mastery. And for each win, you're going to answer this question. How did this win affect the other 2 domains? Because by now, you should be seeing clear connections. Better communication, leading to better opportunities, leading to better income, leading to more confidence, leading to even better communication. That's the upward spiral, and you need to see it clearly so you can replicate it. Day 30 is your graduation, but it's not an ending. It's a checkpoint. You're going to do a complete audit. Record yourself stating your value and watch it back. Read your thought journals and identify which patterns have shifted. Review your spending and calculate exactly how much you've saved or earned differently. And then you're going to make 3 new commitments for the next 30 days. Not completely new practices, deepening the practices that worked best. Because mastery isn't 30 days. It's 30 days, then 30 more, then 30 more. Until the practices are so automatic, you don't even think about them. But here's what I need you to understand about the 30-day intensive. It's not magic. It won't solve every problem in your life. But it will prove to you that you can change. That you're not stuck with the communication patterns you have, that you're not stuck with the thought patterns you have, that you're not stuck with the financial patterns you have, and that proof, that evidence, is what allows you to keep going when it gets hard. Now let's talk about what happens after the 30 days, because this is where most people plateau. They do the intensive work, they see improvement, and then they relax. They stop doing the practices that created the improvement, and slowly, imperceptibly, they slide back toward their old baseline. Not all the way back, but enough that the momentum stalls, enough that the transformation stops halfway. The post-intensive phase is about maintenance and evolution. You need routines that keep you at your new level while continuing to push forward. Here's what that looks like practically. Your weekly maintenance routine takes about 90 minutes. Sunday evening or Monday morning, you sit down with your journal and you review your week through the Trinity lens. How did I communicate this week? Where was I clear and confident? Where did I hedge or over-explain? What's one mouth skill I want to focus on this week? How did I think this week? What mental patterns served me? What patterns sabotaged me? What's one mind upgrade I want to install this week? How did I handle money this week? What did I earn? What did I spend? What decisions did I make? What's one money practice I want to improve this week? And then you plan the week ahead. You schedule your mouth practice. Maybe it's recording yourself for 5 minutes, talking about your work and watching it back. You schedule your mind practice. Maybe it's a daily thought audit at the end of each day. You schedule your money practice. Maybe it's a midweek spending check-in. You don't leave it to chance. You put it on the calendar like any other important appointment. Your monthly deep dive takes about 2 hours. You're looking for patterns and trajectory. Not just what happened this month, but how this month compares to the previous 3 months. Is your communication improving consistently? Are you catching limiting thoughts faster? Is your income trending up? Are your savings growing? The monthly view shows you whether you're on track or whether you need to course correct. And here's a critical practice that most people skip. The monthly money meeting. If you're married or in a partnership, this is a sit-down meeting where you review finances together. If you're single, this is a meeting with yourself where you review every account, every debt, every investment, every financial decision. No hiding, no avoiding, complete transparency. This meeting keeps money from becoming the thing you ignore until there's a crisis. Your quarterly identity check-in takes about 3 hours. This is deep work. You're asking big questions. Who am I becoming? Is the person I'm becoming aligned with the person I want to be? What evidence do I have that I'm on the right path? What evidence suggests I need to adjust? This isn't navel-gazing. This is strategic self-assessment, because you can be busy, you can be productive, you can be making money, and still be drifting away from the life you actually want. The quarterly check-in catches that drift before it becomes a 5-year detour. Now let's talk about advanced applications. Because once you've built the foundation, once the basic practices are automatic, you can start using the Trinity to tackle bigger, more complex challenges. Relationships are one of the most common applications. The same 3 forces that control your professional life control your personal relationships. Your mouth determines whether you communicate clearly or create confusion. Your mind determines whether you respond strategically or reactively. Your money, or how you handle resources and boundaries, determines whether the relationship is balanced or resentful. Think about the last conflict you had with someone close to you. What actually happened underneath the surface narrative? Probably a mouth failure. You didn't say what you actually meant. You said something else, something softer or vaguer, hoping they'd read between the lines. They didn't, or you over-explained, trying to make them understand, and they felt criticized or overwhelmed. Most relationship problems are communication problems wearing disguises, or it was a mind failure. You reacted emotionally instead of responding strategically. Someone said something that triggered old programming, and you went into fight or flight mode. You said things you didn't mean. You escalated instead of de-escalated. Your amygdala hijacked your prefrontal cortex, and suddenly you're in a fight about something that doesn't even matter. But now it matters because you're fighting about it. Or it was a money failure. Resources, time, energy, actual money, something wasn't balanced. Someone was giving more than they were receiving. Someone felt taken advantage of. Someone made a financial decision without consultation. And instead of addressing it directly, it festered. It turned into resentment. And now every small issue becomes a big issue because it's not really about the dishes or the vacation or the purchase. It's about the underlying imbalance that never got addressed. The Trinity applies to relationships the same way it applies to business. Clear communication prevents 90% of conflicts. Clear thinking allows you to respond instead of react in the 10% that still happen. Clear boundaries around resources prevent the slow-building resentment that poisons partnerships over time. So here's the relationship application of the Trinity. Once a week, you have a check-in conversation with anyone you're in close relationship with. Partner? 15 minutes, once a week. This practice alone will transform your relationships, because most relationship problems aren't actually problems. They're unaddressed misalignments that compound over time. The weekly check-in catches them early. Business applications are even more direct. If you're building a business, the Trinity is your operating system. Your mouth determines whether you can sell, whether prospects understand your value, whether clients refer you, whether you can pitch investors, whether you can recruit talent. If your mouth isn't mastered, your business growth is capped regardless of how good your product is. Your mind determines whether you make good strategic decisions, whether you stay calm when things go wrong, whether you see opportunities or only obstacles, whether you can hold the vision when everyone around you is doubting. If your mind isn't mastered, you'll make reactive decisions that feel good short-term, but destroy value long-term. Your money determines whether you have runway, whether you can invest in growth, whether you can weather slow periods, whether you can hire ahead of revenue, whether you can walk away from bad deals. If your money isn't mastered, you'll make decisions from scarcity that keep you small. So here's the business application. Monthly strategic review. 90 minutes with your leadership team or with yourself if you're solo. 3 sections. Revenue analysis. What came in? What went out? What's our burn rate? What's our runway? How many months of operating capital do we have? This is money mastery. Brutal honesty about the numbers. Market positioning. How are we communicating our value? What's our messaging? What do prospects say when they hear our pitch? Where are we clear? Where are we confusing? This is mouth mastery. Brutal honesty about whether your communication is actually landing. Decision quality. What major decisions did we make this month? What was the reasoning? What data did we use? What assumptions did we make? With the information we have now, would we make the same decisions? This is mind mastery. Brutal honesty about whether you're thinking clearly or reactively. 90 minutes. Every month. Most businesses skip this. They're too busy executing to reflect, and they wonder why they're grinding hard but not making progress. It's because they're not learning from their actions. They're just repeating the same patterns and hoping for different results. Career transitions are another powerful application. Whether you're changing jobs, changing industries, or starting something new, the Trinity determines whether you succeed or flame out. Most career transitions fail not because the person wasn't capable, but because they didn't manage the 3 forces. Their mouth couldn't articulate their transferable value. They sounded uncertain in interviews. They couldn't explain why someone should take a chance on them despite their lack of direct experience. So they got passed over for people with worse skills but better communication, or their mind couldn't handle the uncertainty. Career transitions are inherently ambiguous. You don't know exactly how it's going to work out. You're making a bet on yourself. And if your mind can't tolerate that ambiguity, if it needs certainty before it can move forward, you'll never make the jump. You'll stay in the job you hate because at least it's familiar, or their money situation forced their hand. They didn't have enough runway. They didn't plan for the income gap. They panicked 3 months in and took the first offer that came along, even if it wasn't the right fit. And now they're stuck again. Here's the career transition protocol. Before you make the move, you build your foundation. You save 12 months of expenses minimum, not 6 months, 12. Because career transitions always take longer than you think. You practice articulating your value in the new domain. You can't sound like you're figuring it out as you go. You need to sound like you know exactly why you're the right person for this. And you install mental practices that help you handle uncertainty without panicking. Then you make the move. And during the transition, you run the 30-day intensive continuously. Daily practices that keep your mouth sharp, your mind clear, and your money tracked. This isn't optional. This is survival. Because career transitions are high stress, and stress reveals your default patterns. If you don't have practices in place to counter those defaults, you'll revert to exactly the behaviors that kept you stuck before. After 6 months in the new role or new business, you do a full audit. Is this actually better than what I left? Not just financially, holistically. Am I happier? Am I growing? Am I building towards something meaningful? If yes, double down. If no, course correct. But you don't wait until you've wasted 3 years to ask the question. Let's talk about handling crisis through the Trinity. Because life will throw you situations where everything falls apart at once. Financial crisis, health crisis, relationship crisis, business crisis. And in those moments, untrained people fall apart. They panic. They make terrible decisions. They say things they can't take back. They spend money they don't have. They spiral. But if you've mastered the Trinity, crisis becomes something different. Not easy, not pleasant, but manageable. Because you have tools. When crisis hits, your mouth becomes a tool for getting help and setting boundaries. You can articulate what you need clearly. You can ask for support without shame. You can say no to things that will drain you further. Most people can't do this. They suffer in silence because they can't find the words, or they overshare and overwhelm everyone around them. You do neither. You communicate with precision. This is what's happening. This is what I need. This is what I can't take on right now. Your mind becomes a tool for staying strategic when emotions are high. You can separate what you feel from what you know. You feel terrified. You know you've handled hard things before. You feel like it's the end of the world. You know that's catastrophizing, and the real situation, while difficult, is manageable. This separation, this ability to think clearly while feeling intensely, is what allows you to make good decisions when stakes are high. Your money becomes a tool for buying options. If you've built your emergency fund, if you've been tracking and saving, if you've been disciplined, you have runway. You can afford to not panic. You can take the time to find the right solution instead of accepting the first bad option. You can walk away from situations that aren't serving you. That financial margin is the difference between desperation and strategy. Here's the crisis protocol. When crisis hits, you don't abandon your practices. You intensify them. Morning routine becomes non-negotiable, because that's when you program your mind for the day. If you skip it, you're running on default programming, and default programming in crisis is panic. You do a daily thought audit focused specifically on catastrophizing. What's my mind telling me is going to happen? Is that actually likely? What's the real worst case? Can I handle that? This keeps you from spiraling into scenarios that are 97% unlikely. You do a daily money check-in. Where am I financially right now? How much runway do I have? What expenses can I cut if needed? What income can I generate if needed? This keeps you from financial fog, which is where bad money decisions get made, and you give yourself permission to do less. Crisis is not the time to maintain your normal productivity. It's the time to focus on survival and recovery. You strip back to essentials, the practices that maintain your mastery, the work that generates income, the relationships that sustain you. Everything else can wait. Most people do the opposite. They abandon their practices when crisis hits because they feel like they don't have time. And that's exactly when they need the practices most. Because practices are what keep you sane when everything else is chaos. Now let's talk about the long game. Because 30 days is great. 90 days is better. But real mastery, the kind that changes your life permanently, takes years. Not because the practices are complicated, because integration takes time, because rewiring neural pathways takes repetition, because building wealth takes compounding. The 1-year mark is where you see dramatic changes. Your communication is sharp. You state your value without thinking about it. You set boundaries automatically. You speak with authority that you don't have to manufacture because it's genuinely how you see yourself now. Your mind is clear. You catch limiting thoughts within seconds. You make decisions quickly. You handle uncertainty without anxiety. You've done enough thought audits that you know which patterns are yours and which are borrowed programming, and you've replaced enough borrowed programming with useful thoughts that your default thinking actually serves you. Your money is growing. Maybe not life-changing amounts yet, but the trajectory is clear. You're earning more because you're charging what you're worth. You're keeping more because you've eliminated unconscious spending. You're building wealth because you've automated savings and investment, and the compound effect is starting to show. The 3-year mark is where you become unrecognizable. People who knew you before can't quite figure out what changed. You look the same, but something's different. You carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You make decisions differently, and your life circumstances reflect that difference. Better income, better relationships, better opportunities, not because you got lucky, because you mastered the forces that create those outcomes. The 5-year mark is where you realize you've built something permanent. The practices. But here's the thing about the long game. You can't wait 5 years to see if it's working. You need wins along the way. You need evidence that the path is right. So let me give you the milestone markers. The signs that you're on track. 30-day milestone. You've done the practices consistently. Not perfectly, but consistently. You've seen small improvements in each domain. A conversation that went better than expected. A thought pattern you interrupted. A week where you didn't overspend. These small wins are evidence. Don't dismiss them. 90-day milestone. You've made your first significant change. Maybe you raised your rates and someone paid the new rate. Maybe you had a difficult conversation that you would have avoided 3 months ago. Maybe you built your first $1,000 in savings when previously you had zero. One significant change proves to your nervous system that bigger changes are possible. 6-month milestone. Other people are noticing. Someone comments that you seem more confident. A client refers you to someone else specifically because of how you handled a situation. Your bank account is noticeably different. These external markers matter because they confirm that your internal changes are translating to external results. 1-year milestone. You hit a goal that seemed impossible a year ago. Income doubled. 6 months of expenses saved. A project you landed that you wouldn't have even pursued 12 months prior. This is the moment when you realize the system works. Not theoretically. Actually, 3-year milestone. You can't imagine going back to who you were. The old patterns feel foreign. The old income feels impossible to live on. The old thinking feels claustrophobic. You've integrated the changes so completely that they're just your new normal. And your new normal keeps improving. These milestones keep you going. Because the long game is hard. There will be moments when you question whether it's worth it. When progress feels slow, when you're tempted to go back to the familiar patterns even though they don't serve you. In those moments, you look back at the milestones. You remind yourself how far you've come, and you keep going. Let me close with this. You have a choice to make. Not someday, right now. You can close this out, feel briefly inspired, and return to the patterns that created your current life. Most people will do that. Or you can decide that this is the moment everything changes. That you're going to master your mouth, your mind, and your money. That you're going to do the work even when it's uncomfortable. That you're going to build the life you're capable of building instead of settling for the life you've been accepting. The forces are already operating. They've been operating your entire life. They're operating right now. The question isn't whether they exist. The question is whether you're going to master them or continue being ruled by them. And that choice, that decision, is what determines everything else. Your next conversation is practice. Your next thought is practice. Your next financial decision is practice. Everything is practice. And practice, sustained over time, becomes mastery. And mastery becomes freedom. Freedom to live on your terms. Freedom to build what matters. Freedom to become who you're capable of becoming. 3 forces. 1 system. Your life. Go master it.